Ready to dive deeper into your spiritual journey? Join Dave Drum and Ben Garcia as they explore the raw, honest, and nuanced experiences of modern spiritual men. Here is something to chew on.
Setup, right? You guys play with Legos at your house.
Oh my gosh, we have so many Legos at our house.
Exactly, because I know your son Logan is all about some Legos, and even
Bryson.
Bryson was into Legos. All three of my kids have been into Legos. Emily, still does them now, and as a teenager. But what is the one thing about Legos that is essential? Because if I bring you a Lego, what can you do with a Lego?
You can imagine what you could do with so many more Legos.
Right, because Legos are just absolutely not meant to be used alone.
Right.
In fact, when they're alone, they're actually dangerous because that's usually when they're on the floor.
Yes.
And that's when you find them alone on the floor. And they cause pain alone. And there's probably a metaphor there that we can use.
Yeah, there's something going on there, something deeper. Yeah, isolation, I think, is a big thing with guys. And when we're able to, like you say, the Legos fit together and we can build things together, go back to that community and being able to hold each other accountable, like using that Lego metaphor, they can go together and create all kinds of beautiful things. We just built the Hogwarts castle. He got that for Christmas, which is super awesome, man. Long day, but you can also construct some pretty crazy things with it, when you don't have the right Lego pieces going together. Talk about the friendships that we build and good friends, bad friends, people that lead you in the right direction and people that don't have your best interest in mind, but we were talking just real quick about the isolation thing. What do you think is the most important thing about, or I guess the most detrimental thing about isolation, being isolated?
Well, I guess you look at it from different perspectives, right? It's like different camera angles on the same object because there's a biblical perspective, there's a biological perspective, there's a psychological perspective, and even societal. So from a psychological perspective, there's been a lot of studies on isolation and loneliness, whether it's the National Institute of Health or whatever. Pew Research has done a ton of information on it. But basically, the underlying tone is if you have weak or insufficient relationships in your life, and they're not just talking about being married, but intimate relationships where your friendships are there and you have those quality relationships, that people are up to 3 times more prone to early death and chronic diseases. They're seeing issues not only in mental health but in physical health. How it's a trickle-down effect from feeling lonely, feeling isolated. And here we are in a post-COVID society. I feel like, in Florida, we got to the post-COVID society a little quicker than some other places. But the reality is during COVID, and it was spoken about during COVID, during the lockdown, hey, make sure you're checking on people. Make sure you're still finding, Zoom became, I don't know that people knew what Zoom was pre-COVID.
Right. If you weren't in the business world.
Yeah, exactly. It just wasn't a thing yet. Mid-COVID, I'm like a lot of people. I'm a transplant to Florida. I got family all over, and we did a family Zoom. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, so my parents and my 4 siblings, we all jumped on Zoom, and some of our kids jumped on Zoom, and we took a screenshot of that. And, so some of the family's local, some's out of state, and we took a picture of that and posted it on social media. And instantly, like, all my cousins and aunts and uncles start chiming in, like,
Right.
when are we doing this? When are we doing this? And so the next one, we had generation after generation after generation of you know, aunts, uncles, grandparents, all engaged in this Zoom thing, and the screenshot was much more cluttered. But it was all about making sure that our relationships were intact during a time when we couldn't physically be together.
Right. That makes me think about, you know, something we talk about, you know, there's that research that says, you know, that most men don't have close relationships. You know, we're lucky to have 3 or 4 close friends. You know, I remember a guy telling me years and years ago that you'll be lucky to have 3 close friends your whole life. You know, that kind of stinks, man. You know, but that's guys in general. You know, and you were given the visual of the multiple people on the screen, you know, and that cluttered look, and that can also, you know, be a little bit, I don't know, allowing the right people to speak into your life. You know, if you have all your cousins and everything, and I imagine that conversation was very difficult to navigate,
Right.
you know, in that instance. So I think that it's important for us to also think about the voices that we are letting into our lives. You know, we want those 3 or 4 close friends, but then who are the people that we shouldn't be listening to, I guess is where I was kind of going with that. You know, when you just mentioned that all those people makes me think about all the different voices that you're inundated with in your daily life, you know? So I don't know where I was going with that.
No, I think there's, you know, kind of the point of this whole podcast. There's different rabbit holes we can go down, different trails we can follow. So I guess for right now, like that idea of, before we get into, you know, what are the right voices to help you filter through the noise of extraneous voices or extra voices or the wrong voices. So like I said, you know, you have the psychology of it, you have, you know, a biblical perspective, which we want to get into, because, you know, for us, everything's filtered through the truth of the Bible and truth of Scripture. But, you know, so Pew Research, which is just a big research conglomerate, they do a lot of, you know, public research. So really what you're talking about is like the society's perspective on something. It's not anything other than this is just what people are telling us. So it's a sociological perspective, and they're finding that 53% of adults have only between 1 and 4 what they would consider close friends. Only 38%, so a distinct minority, has more than 5 friends. But one of the hard ones, and it seems like a small number unless you're one of them, so 8% have no close friends. So if you roll all those numbers together, 47% less than 5 close friends. And 30% have less than 3. So a third of this reporting population has less than 3 close friends, 3 people that they can lean on. And, you know, as I read through that the first time, you know, it's like, well, hang on a second.
Yeah.
But you
what
want
are they defining as close friends, though?
Well,
you know?
and that's a subjective measure, right?
Yeah.
I can say, oh, I'm super close with that guy. And I've got a friend who I love the guy to death. But I remember once talking to my wife, and I said, you know, I love hanging out with that guy, but he is 3 feet deep with 1,000 people. And I'd rather be 1,000 feet deep with 3 people.
Absolutely.
And so it's not a dig on him. Our personalities are different. Our jobs are different. Our roles are different. And he is, when you meet him, you feel like you're friends.
Yeah. Very engaging.
What I will tell you is you fast forward a couple of years and you get into the weeds of it, you know, you're going to have a moment where you're like, bro, where you been?
Yeah. Still that same 2 years deep. You're still that same.
Yeah. You
just met, same conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's, again, it is not a dig on him. So it's what he considers close friends, what I consider close friends. It's very subjective.
Right.
So it's, for me, it's who are those people that I'm willing to trust with the contents of who I am, the contents of what I want to do in life, because ultimately, we're talking about the different perspectives, and like I'm all mired down in my circumstance and everything. And the great thing about, established friendships over time, that type of community, is you being able to look at it from the outside and go, hey, essentially, that's not who you said you wanted to be.
Yeah.
Like you've been clear.
Yeah.
You want to, pursue the life that God's calling you to. But that path you're walking down in that circumstance, it don't go where you think it goes.
Right. That goes back to the giving each other permission to speak into that, and your buddy that's got 1,000 relationships shallow doesn't get that kind of permission to do that, or doesn't offer up himself to be spoken into in that way. And I think that is an epidemic. I don't want to say pandemic, but with men in general, it's, Hollywood produces that stoic man. I can go it alone, the hero that's all by himself. And reality is that is dangerous, man. That is super dangerous, because if you don't have somebody course correcting you, you're going to just go in the path that you think is the best way to go. And the Bible says that, a man plans his ways, but God determines his heart, or all a man's plans lead to death. When we're not aligned with the Bible. And isolation is just one of the worst things that we as men can do, although society tells us that that's what we're supposed to be doing. So let's talk a little bit about that, biblical principles versus cultural principles, and how, as friends, as, confidants, as people that want the best for each other, how we're just wired to go a certain way, that isolation, that alone, but how, we're called to go a different way.
So it's funny, you said like we're wired to go a certain way, but are we? Because...
Well, I mean, Adam's first sin, it's embedded in us,
Well, but think about that.
Yeah.
From the get-go, from creation, God's statement about man was, it's not good for him to be alone.
Yeah.
And you need a helper.
Yeah.
So God establishes, like, hey, this is not okay.
Yeah, he's going to mess it up.
If you're not familiar with the creation story, like, God's creating all kinds of stuff. Day, light, night, animals, everything is good. It's good. It's
Facebook.
good. It's good. It's good. And then he gets to Adam alone. He's like, it's not good.
Right.
So him speaking against his own creation, almost, of like, hey, this isn't going to work. So you look at Ecclesiastes 4, says, there was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with its wealth. For who am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless. A miserable business. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one of them can pick the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Like, that's, again, I feel like culture, society, and I would say the Western culture, the Western society, has hijacked this idea of what masculinity looks like.
Yeah.
That you're supposed to be stoic and you're supposed to be alone and you're supposed to be able to manage it on your own.
Yeah.
And but we also, like, why are we so intrigued by a series like Band of Brothers? Like, oh man, look at these guys.
Look at how they came together. And
Or you know, one we were joking about earlier, the movie Tag.
Great flick, man. Great flick.
If you're not familiar with Tag, I think it was like 2018 movie. Jeremy Renner is probably the big name in it.
It's got John Hamm in it. He's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, John Hamm's in it. But it's a Hollywood version of a true story. You know, they take a lot of creative liberties with it, but it follows a group of guys. I think in real life it's like 10 guys, but the movie it's 5 guys who have played the same game of tag once a month for like 30 years. So for the month in the movie, it's the month of May. Yeah. They get together and they play tag, and the movie's based around a reporter who's watching all this unfold and is trying to keep up with this group of guys tagging each other, and it's pretty funny. It's mostly irreverent, but pretty stinking funny. Yeah. And in the midst of it, the reporter makes the statement like, the game has given you guys a reason to stay in each other's lives all this time. And you know, as a guy, you know, we were talking about our church backgrounds and stuff. Like, I've always been a groups guy. Like, I do believe in relationship. I do believe in connection and stuff like that, and the value of it. But it's like, we'll look at something like that and be like, yeah, man, I want to be. I wish I would have. I want to be friends for 30 years playing tag because it's dumb but sounds funny, and like
so cool.
It just the mere fact that these guys had that, like, why that's a great story because it's uncommon. But why is it uncommon? Because we let ourselves get pulled out of these friendships and whatnot. So, like, if we recognize the value of it when we're looking at it and we want to get there and we all see the value in having it, why is it so hard for us to do that?
Intentionality, man. I think that us being intentional about being in each other's lives, it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day monotony, the stuff that doesn't matter. You know, in the end, when you're standing there at the pearly gates with St. Peter and he's going to ask, well, how many projects did you get done? You know, how many deadlines did you meet? You know, no, he's not going to ask that. He's going to ask, how did you love your neighbor? You know, how did you bring value into other people's lives? How were you accountable to your friends? And how were you there when they needed you? And in what ways were you able to love undyingly? You know, there's that African proverb. It goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You know, we need people to help us. You know, that Ecclesiastes verse you said, you know, pity the guy that doesn't have somebody there to help him up. You know, that isolation is just, it will just bring you down, man. And it's so, I don't know. It's for guys, I feel like as you become an adult, you know, you kind of put up the walls, you know, you put the armor on, you're had a couple hurts in your life, maybe as a teenager or a young adult, and you don't like that pain. You don't want to feel that, and you block that out. And by putting up those walls, yeah, you're not going to let pain get in, but you're also not letting so much other stuff get in, so much love to get in to help through heal those, whatever may have caused you to put those walls up, you know? So many times we're just, when we're isolated, it's obviously it's by our own doing, but
yeah.
Well,
I think that's the catch-22 of it. You know, we isolate ourselves because we feel like it's going to make ourselves safer, but the reality is the isolation exposes us to so much more dangers and risks. Because left, you know, we see it again in nature. We see it in the Bible. You know,
The weak.
a pack of lions don't aim for the masses.
Yeah.
They aim to shear an antelope or a zebra off of the pack.
Yeah.
You know, how does the zebra's camouflage work? You know, this red or this black and white striped thing in the middle of a field. It's not great camouflage unless they're all together.
Right.
Because then, you know, the predator can't identify a singular object in the herd. But if they can get one to break off, if they can split one off who's a little slower, a little weaker, and get them isolated, they stand a much greater chance of wearing it down. Even to the point of, you know, you're talking about that African proverb there.
Yeah.
In the sub-Saharan African continent, there are tribes. We would call them persistence hunters. Where they literally go out. These are just, you know, backcountry bushmen that literally armed with a knife, maybe a spear, but they're not in full armor or anything, and they're going to go take down an antelope.
They got a nice pair of Nikes on.
Or maybe sandals. And all they do is they just slowly run after these animals, and they spook them, and the animals run, and they find that one that's a little slower, and over time, what happens is they wear the animals down. The animals aren't able to sweat to cool their body down. People can do that, and over the time of, you know, 5, 6, 7 miles, they just wear this animal down to the point where it no longer fights back.
Right.
It no longer runs. And the hunters are able to literally just walk up on it and kill it.
Right.
And it doesn't even protest.
Yeah.
Yeah, these people are called like the Sand People of Africa.
The Sand People of Africa.
Sand, S-A-N.
Sand.
Sand.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
So
that was producer Nick, by the way.
You know, like Harry Potter has nearly headless Nick, we have disembodied Nick. So disembodied Nick chiming in from the back.
Yeah.
So he's also our fact checker.
Yeah.
So because that's important.
It's very important.
But you see this real life example of how being isolated is dangerous, but I think spiritually the same thing will happen.
Absolutely.
You isolate, and all the while, you know, our enemy is just like, okay, yeah, keep doing that, keep doing that, and at some point you will be so tired, you will be so exhausted of fighting against that he's going to walk up and you're not even going to put up a fight.
Right. Yep. And that's why you need that community around you.
And you need that community to go, hey, why are you not fighting that?
Right.
But better than that is in Scripture we see where that community around you, you know, you see where Jesus heals a lame man because of the faith of the friends.
Yeah, you never get to hear about them. You just they lower him down. The guy gets all the blessing, and they're stuck up on the roof repairing it. You know,
re-thatchifying it.
Re-thatchifying it. Yeah, I think about that as you were talking about, you know, the Sand People. Thank you, Nick. And how Satan does that. You know, how the enemy will. You know, the first step is to isolate you. The first step is to kind of draw you away from you. No, I'm not good enough to go to that. You know, talk about groups, and our church is big on groups, small groups, and just like, so many times I've led a small group, and you know, the guy will show up 3-4 weeks in a row, and then like, what happened to John? I don't know. Give him a call, like, oh, I couldn't make it this week, and then the next, oh, I couldn't make it this week, and then, oh, he was arrested. Oh man, why? Well, he had nobody in his life. You know, he had nobody calling him up to the good things in his life, and so we need people to be there, but we also need to be there for people. You know, we need to be reaching out to people. You know, to have good friends, you need to be a good friend. You know, and to also think about it in that aspect, you need to be checking on your friends and being able to take time out of your busy life, you know, to build those relationships. And obviously we're all inundated with so much stuff. You got work and kids and wife. You got to make her happy, and you got church, and there's so many things that are pulling us in so many different directions. But we have to be intentional about the things that we devote our time to.
Well, and I think you're right, because there's 1,000 reasons, and some of them are excuses, but some of them are reasons. I missed men's group last week because I went to my daughter's basketball game.
Shame.
So it's like somebody said, "Oh, Dave wasn't at men's group."
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm watching my daughter play basketball. I'm investing in a teenage
Absolutely.
girl's life, and anyone who knew where I was, valued that. That's what I valued.
100%.
But they only know that if they reach out to say, "Hey, man, where were you?
Right.
Hey, where you been? Oh, it's
Didn't see you there.
This is going on. So we all have obligations, especially if you got family and you got kids, and as kids get older, they get involved in activities. And my daughter's 14. She makes a schedule like she's her own person that can drive there. She is not her own person, and she can't drive there. So she should probably get a better handle on my schedule and my wife's schedule before she starts, agreeing to things. But, but how many things do I treat like they're obligations that are really just distractions?
Yeah.
And that's where, again, friendship comes in for somebody to be like, "You've been spending a lot of time on social media or whatever. Like, how many hours a day do you waste?" "Oh, no, just a couple minutes here and there."
Yeah.
You posted 67 things. You liked everything on this thread.
Right.
So it's deciding, where are you going to put that in, and the other is, you sometimes you have to say no to good stuff.
Yeah.
To be able to truly invest in good relationships and whatever, because the reality is you can't cultivate everyone as a close friend. Not everybody's supposed to be your close friend.
Right.
I've heard the phrase in different leadership courses and stuff like that. Like, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Or the "show me your friends and I'll show you your future."
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's a good one.
like, I kind of like having one idiot friend. Like, somebody got to jump off the rock first to see if it's deep enough in the water. Like, there's got to be that guy.
And if you can't identify who that guy is,
You might be that guy. And I don't want to be that guy. Plus, there's the idea of, you see it a lot in churches where you're like, "Oh, you're supposed to have someone, a Paul, a Timothy, a Barnabas, someone you're looking up to, someone you're looking across at, someone who you're
pulling up.
You
were going to say looking down.
Yeah.
It just fit right there, but no, we're not doing
it did, but it sounded bad.
No, I agree, man.
Disembodied Nick can fix that later.
Yeah, so to think about that.
Or not.
I think about, we all need a Paul, somebody, a mentor, somebody that is definitely, they don't, a lot of times you think of a mentor as like way older, but sometimes it's just somebody that's been down that road, and you can have multiple mentors throughout your life. I think, looking back, there was guys that maybe I gave that authority in my life that probably shouldn't have had that at times. And then there's guys that I am so glad God put them in my life, that they were more of a father figure to me than a mentor, but they showed me how to live in a biblical way and live that. But I think sometimes it's just difficult for guys to approach another guy. In one of the men's group I lead, there's a whole section on mentors, and like the guy's like, just go up and ask somebody, "Will you mentor me?" Like, how awkward that is to just walk up to a guy and be like, "Will you be my friend?" That's not it. I had coffee with a guy just last week, and you could see his like hands are sweaty, he's like kind of sitting there and like just fidgety. He's like, "So how does this work?" Like, "Bro, we're just having coffee and having a conversation, What do you want to talk about?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know." So it's for us as guys, breaking through that initial wall I was speaking about before is difficult. You think about like when you were a kid, how easy it was to make friends, you know, and like just go up on the playground, like, hey, you want to play? Like, yeah,
you see my car?
Yeah, wow, let's do it. You know, and Logan, he's 8, going on 9, and we go to the park all the time, dude, and we'll leave there, and that was his best friend. When are we going back to see Jacob? You know, like
who's Jacob?
Who's Jacob? I've never even heard of that kid. No, he's my best friend. Like, you know, and you know that's one of those surface level things, but the ability to have that free spirit, that free will, to just be, you know, not be worried, what are they thinking of me? Am I going to say something stupid? Of course, I'm going to say something stupid. That's kind of my thing. But, you know,
it is your thing. You got it on lockdown.
Just being able to.
I just want to support you in that.
I appreciate that, Dave. Being able to let your guard down long enough to let people in, you know, that's the first step, I think, in creating those true, deep friendships, you know, and allowing somebody to speak into your life, creating that environment for them to speak into, and receiving that, you know.
And you know, I think from there, and this is going to be like, this is
this a heart-to-heart thing?
Oh no, this is the moment somebody's waiting for. I hate to break it to you. That person you're hanging out with, that you're like, oh yeah, I kind of like them. They're not perfect. But here's the weird thing. Neither are you.
Right.
I can remember, this was years ago. Hung out with a guy a couple of times at church. You know, invites me and my wife and my kids over. We're going to hang out. We're going to have a barbecue. We've been there maybe 20, 30 minutes, you know, kind of the initial stuff. Wives are, you know, in the kitchen chatting, and he's going to go check the meat on the grill. So we walk out the sliders onto the lanai, and I follow him out. I don't remember if we were having steak or burgers or whatever, but he's flipping the meat and pauses in the middle of it, looks at me, goes, hey, if we're going to be friends, I just need you to understand something. I'm going to let you down. I'm going to disappoint you. And in the moment, I was like, all right.
Okay.
Like, I didn't even know what to do with it. But the reality is,
yeah,
I think that's one of our biggest hurdles in our society right now, in this Western culture, because we're a microwave society. Like,
absolutely.
We want meals done in 60 seconds in the microwave. We want, you know, everything is push button automation. We want
30-year friendships in 2.5 years.
We want the benefits of a 30-year friendship, and we want people. We want to be able to walk into somebody's house and just walk right into their fridge, and not have to do the 30 years of work to get there,
right?
And not have to have 30 years of disagreements, because we're not perfect. We're gonna disagree. Iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah.
You see it all through Scripture. Iron sharpens iron. Well, if you've ever actually watched that happen, you know, something being sharpened, there's usually sparks and friction, and it takes time.
It's uncomfortable. I'm sure that piece of metal is not loving it.
Exactly. So if that's the actual process, like, we get this wrong. So go ahead into a relationship, or kindle a relationship that's already there, or go back and repair a relationship that fell apart, because here's the thing. They might have been wrong in that circumstance, but I guarantee you are also wrong in a circumstance. So to repair that, to you know, we don't see everything the same way. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on the most important thing.
The main thing. Yeah.
You know, you keep the main things the main things. You stop trying to make secondary and tertiary issues the primary issue. And like, when you disagree, just know, hey man, we're gonna see each other again.
Yeah.
So like, we should probably get used to each other.
Yeah, it's so many. You said go back and repair those friendships, and I think a part of that is admitting we're wrong, you know, or wronged. You know, like
I mean, I get that you're wrong about me being wrong,
right? You know, but I mean, and having humility, you know, I've said it before, I'm the most humble man you'll ever meet, you know, but, you know.
Just ask me.
Just ask me. I'll tell you all about it. but being able to admit your faults, admit your failures, and asking for that forgiveness or extending that forgiveness. And maybe it's undeserved, and maybe sometimes when you need to do that, maybe that repair that relationship, maybe that's not for them, maybe that's for you. Maybe that disagreement that happened 2 years ago or 6 months ago, and it's just been stewing in your mind, and it's just occupying headspace that could be better served in another facet of your life. So, kind of wrapping it up, putting a bow, go back. What's that Bible verse where you go to the altar and you're getting ready to present your offering?
If your brother has anything against you, leave your sacrifice, go and be reconciled, then come back.
Right. So, I mean, me and my family, we tithe, but I've never thought of it like that, like as we're writing out that tithe check, or it's all online now, so whatever, getting ready to hit submit, like, do I have somebody that I've wronged or has wronged me? Do I need to go back? It's that microwave society that we've grown so accustomed to. It's been so burned into us that it's really detrimental to those deep relationships. And
I got a perfect example of that.
Please, Dave, tell me.
Perfect example. So, almost 6 years ago, I'm standing in church, and this guy walks up to me, and he's like, "Man, I gotta apologize to you. You shut down this group years ago, and I wasn't ready for it to happen. And I sent you an email, and I wasn't really nice in the email, and told you had to keep going." And I remember looking at the guy and be like, "Bro, I don't even remember that." But
right?
Like if you say so.
Yeah. I think I remember that.
You remember that guy?
Yeah.
But it was.
Yeah.
But coming out of that out of that conversation that we had, it was like you're like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I sent you a nasty gram," and I'm like, if you say so. Like, I don't remember it.
Right.
But what I knew was you were down for the friendship.
Yeah.
Like, you put yourself out there to, that was you going, "Hey, look at my car."
Yeah.
100%. Because it was very much there was no obstacle from my point of view, but there was for you.
Yeah.
So same object, the relationship, you saw it differently. But to come back together, you needed to air that. Mm-hmm. And I think I even said, like, "Hey, man, if you need to hear the words, I forgive you."
Yeah. It was.
But in my mind, there was nothing to forgive. So you may go back to somebody and be like, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry about that." And they're going like, "I don't even know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
Like, what? We stopped hanging out because you stopped calling. Like, I texted you and you didn't respond. Right. So then I got busy, and now it's 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
So there's those opportunities to reestablish stuff. But I think one of the common themes in talking about all this is, okay, so how do grown men find deep friendships that take time to cultivate?
Definitely take time.
And I think there's the idea of finding commonality in something. But if you want those deep relationships, you find commonality in important things. Mm-hmm. So if you're at church, like, I had this conversation just last night with someone. The bulk of our church, walk in, walk out, they don't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
They may nod, they may say hi to the mm-hmm. person at the door greeting them. They're not in a group. They're not showing up for one of the ministries.
Right.
They're not volunteering anywhere.
It's a checkbox.
And I'm hesitant to call it a checkbox. Are there some that? Well, I know there are some that come in like, "Yep, we went to church. We're a good family."
Yep.
And now we can argue all the way home.
Yep.
But there's others that are just like, they're looking around that church going, "Yeah, like, you know, that there's always that group over there that sticks around after church and talks, or, you know, I wish this gaggle of 12 people would get out of the way so that I could pull out of my parking spot. But they just don't realize actually how easy it would be to get connected with a group of people. So I think there's that opportunity to use church as the point, as the purpose. I was at the grocery store and I saw somebody wearing one of the church T-shirts, and it was like, hey, I go there. And now it's like, I got a friend in aisle 7.
Right. The starting point. So it's a good icebreaker.
Yeah.
You know, did you see one of the shirts was on the Price is Right? Yeah, dude. Do Be Kind shirt on Price is Right.
I did not see that.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there. Totally off topic, but okay.
Oh, well, then it's a time for a word from one of our sponsors. Our sponsor, the Cozy Quokka. Because we need to stop pretending that jeans are comfortable as I sit here in my jeans. Look, no one's fooled by your business casual sweatpants. The Cozy Quokka makes loungewear so soft you'll feel your crotches hugging you back. Perfect for work calls, naps, or judging people on social media. Use the code CROTCHHUG for 20% off your first order. The Cozy Quokka, because real pants are a scam. That is horrible.
Oh, that's so great.
I hope they paid us a lot for that. Or anything.
Parrot looking thing? It's a quokka.
Like a big hamster.
Is it? Okay.
Here, I'll show you pictures of Quokka.
That's so funny.
That's ridiculous.
So you were touching on us, church being a focal point for relationships, either getting into them or, you know, just a commonality of them, you know, and prepping for this, we kind of found this resource book called Bowling Alone. And he has this quote in there that says, faith communities in which people worship together are arguably the single most important repository of social capital in America. The church is people, you know, and that is, you know, that's something that we believe, you know, the church isn't a building, it's the people. We are the hands and feet, and we try, I try to live that out in all facets of our lives, in all day, every day, you know. All of life for all of life. That's Matt Chandler. And I think that in the 80s and 90s, 70s, whatever, church got such a bad rap about two-faced. What's the word I'm looking for? Hypocritical. Yes. And it's starting to come down now. You know, leaning into that, utilizing church to cultivate our friendships and how we can find commonality, starting with the biblical principles that we all agree we want to live by, and then spacing out into the other facets of our lives that we then find commonality in. You know, we found, you know, Dave, if you guys didn't know, is Slim Goodbody here. He's Mr. Fit and kind of smart too. Got a couple pieces of paper to tell you that. But, you know, when we had kind of came back together as friends, that was kind of my, like, hey, you know, we both believe in that. You still work out? Yeah, okay, I'll be over there on Tuesday. You know, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. You know, and...
Yeah, it was literally, that was the funny thing was we were talking about working out at my house, and my cousin standing there as well is like, well, I never got the invite. And I was like, I'm not sure Ben ever got an invite either. But kind of like kids on a playground, you're like, hey, I'll be there Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay, like, what do I care? I'm going to work out. You can come too. So it's, I think sometimes it's that easy. We overcomplicate it. And I think it depends on what your image of church is. Because we have a perspective of the church as the people, the church is the body, the church is the community.
Yeah.
And so we engage in church almost yes, there's the spiritual component, but there's also the relational component, because the relational component is a reflection of the spiritual one.
Absolutely. It's a lifestyle.
But if you grew up either in a church that was like this, or if you didn't grow up in a church, is probably a better example. If you didn't grow up in the church, anytime you meet with a group of people, it is very
obvious,
consumeristic.
Oh, okay. Going a different way.
I've gone to a football game. I bought a ticket. I go to the stands. I want to watch this football game, maybe eat a hot dog and drink a beverage, and then I want to leave. You know, and during that football game, this guy next to me who's cheering for the same team, like, we're friends.
Yeah.
We're on the same team. Commonality. But when we leave, like, hey man, see ya.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a high five on the way out because we won. Or if we go to a movie, like, it's very consumeristic. I am here to consume what's in front of me. I don't care everybody else's experience. Like,
are you saying that people treat church that way?
I mean, I feel like that could probably be its own episode. Disembodied Nick, we may need to come back to the topic of
I think that's one that we definitely need to talk about.
of a consumeristic church community.
Sorry.
But if you walk in there like it's a show, you are going to treat the people around you like other audience members, not as brothers and sisters, not as a community, not as people who have something to offer, and that you have something to offer them.
Yeah, that's something I struggle with a little bit from time to time. Having a little bit of a musical background, playing in bands and stuff like that in my teens and 20s.
We should use some of your music as the intro music.
We should.
Yeah, you guys don't want that. But having a,
Yeah, me too.
you know, for me personally, sometimes I struggle with the worship, you know, and it wasn't until I thought of it from that, you know, I'm here to worship. I'm not here to be entertained, you know, and sometimes we get lost in that, you know, we come in and there's lights and there's loud music and, you know, the pastor tells some funny jokes and you know, some corny references and stuff like that. And it is entertaining, you know, and I think that we get lost in that. And I think that, you know, our church, they do that for the new believer to catch them and keep them coming back. But like I was saying, for me, struggling with that worship, that consumeristic point of view in that, hey, I had to take a step back and I had to look inside, like, why does this bother me? What am I trying to get from it? Why am I trying to get that? And why am I not just there worshiping God? You know, and it took a little bit of time. And I still struggle with it. You know, it's just standing there. You know, sometimes there'll be a song that I don't know or I don't like. You know, and then I just start looking at it like, what the heck's going on here? You know.
So if I heard you correctly, you had to evaluate how you were approaching the service. And I feel like if you've gone to church and I was guilty of it. I grew up in the church, went in the military, you know, got stationed 8 hours away from where I grew up. Sunday comes, I can remember going to church by myself and standing in this church that I don't know a soul. And I remember leaving feeling sad. I was homesick.
Yeah.
Because the church I grew up in, I had friends. I went to school at the school attached to that church. So it's like my school friends were also there on the weekends and like church would end and our parents were talking and we were running around, you know, out in the parking lot like idiots or, you know, we'd run down to the playground or whatever. We had that opportunity. Church that's where my relationships were.
I find it hard to believe that you walked out of a building and didn't talk to somebody and make a new friend.
I'm telling you, so I stopped going.
Really?
I stopped going. I went 15 years without stepping foot into a church unless it was a wedding or a funeral.
Blasphemer.
No, it wasn't really because I just wasn't there.
Yeah.
But it was a relationship that brought me back to church. That's a whole other relationship story. But the reality was, until I started engaging with the people around me, that church wasn't my home either. So, but very quickly, it's like, okay, I'm here. So what are we doing? What's next? Let me talk to these people. Let me talk to these people.
Seen that firsthand.
Weird.
So he's that guy in the lobby. Yeah,
I can be. But that's the thing. Like, if you show up here, and this is the church show that you're going to watch on Saturday or Sunday, then you will walk out when the show is over, and you may have been entertained. You may have heard something you liked, and maybe you walk out feeling inspired and motivated, and you know how long that's going to last?
the parking lot.
The parking lot. Till the first thing gets in your way that frustrates you because you don't have an anchor in it. Whereas if you show up and your perspective is, well, this is my family and these are my people and this is my tribe. Newsflash, they don't have to look like you. They don't have to act like you. They don't have to be the same age as you. Yes, there's some convenience of commonality of being in the same stage of life. But the reality is, if you look at church history, going back to the first century, to the Acts 2 church, what did that look like? We all didn't look alike.
Right.
Because Jesus was pulling people from all the dismissed ethnic groups and even the Jews. So like you had this collective.
Well, when they're up in the upper room and the tongues of fire come down and they're all speaking in tongues, there was, that was during Pentecost. So there was a bunch of different languages there. And it doesn't say how many, but I can imagine it was more than I know how to speak, But yeah, I think that us understanding that we're not there to be entertained, we should go there looking to be fed, but also, looking at it as visiting with family. Obviously there's some family that you tend to not find entertaining or wanting to be with, but when you go into that environment, you have those relationships. You say hi. The tech guy, me and him are both fans of the same football team, and that's our commonality. We're both there for the same reason. We're there to worship Jesus and everything, but we have this other topic that we'll talk about that until it's time for service to start. It's like, oh man, there's 20 seconds. I got to go sit down. And finding those commonalities and not looking at church as a consumer, looking at it as a place to be fed and cultivate those friendships, those relationships, I think will lead you to a more fruitful life, will encourage those deeper friendships and allow you to grow as a person.
And I don't think we do that in other areas of our life. Like I think about, if I go to my parents for dinner, we're going to do a family dinner or whatever. We go there and mom's in the kitchen. I'm not sitting on the couch, Ma, where's the meatloaf? We're ready for the meatloaf. It's not that. It's, hey, Ma, like, you need help?
Yeah.
What do you need? Or the, hey, come get the bowl down from the top shelf.
Yeah.
Because mom is not tall.
Right.
It's.
So are we approaching our friendships in that same way?
And are we approaching church the same way?
Yeah.
Like, I show up.
That's good. What can I do?
What can I do? Again, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But when you show up with that, like, is there something I can do?
Yeah.
When you meet with a guy for the first time, like, hey, is there something I can do?
Yeah.
Like, how
can I help you? Help me help you.
Yeah, help me help you. Because the reality is, we are used to people trying to take from us to to steal our joy, to steal our peace, to drain us. We're not used to someone coming along trying to add value, to contribute, to support. So I think what we would find if we were to actually try and do that, it is we would find energy, and we would find joy, and we would find that relational satisfaction by being a contributor.
Yeah, it's truly better to give than receive, you know.
I heard that somewhere.
Yeah, it's all over the place. We talk about cultivating friendships in church and living those commonalities out in life. And in our prep work for this isn't us all off the cuff, you had found this epistle of Diogenes. What is it?
Okay.
I'm not kidding when I say that Dave has 2 pieces of paper that says he's really smart.
Yeah,
I have
but
0.
my mom wrote them.
Right.
Dave are smart. But okay, so before I even read it, just kind of the disclaimer, you put it at the bottom of the screen or whatever. So you had because you use the word epistle. And if you grew up around church, you're like, oh, that's in the Bible.
Right.
So epistle just means letter. It's a fancy word for letter. It's a letter to a guy named Diogenes, and you're talking this particular one's written somewhere like 100 AD to maybe 300 AD, so very first century. At the same time, some of the other actual biblical books are being written. Mm-hmm. This is what they would call extra biblical. It's outside. It's not that it says anything anti-biblical. It's just outside of the biblical text, but it's written at a time that the early church is occurring.
Yeah.
And the whole point of bringing it up is just from the thought process of this is being written from a perspective of who are Christians. Like, Christianity is this new thing.
Right.
It's growing, but it's growing in the face of opposition. And it's growing out of a marginalized community. So it's not growing from a position of power or funding. It's actually growing against all those things.
Right.
So
It's a little long, so brace yourself.
And I'll kind of pick and choose out of it.
Okay.
But it's I would say
I'd just go for the whole thing.
Go for the
Yeah, give context. Yeah.
Okay. So this is and what I would ask you to do is look at it as how does this compare to how those outside the church view those inside the church now? Because this is a point in time of a point of view of the first century church and the community, the relationships that existed there. So it says, for Christians are distinguished from other men neither by country, nor language, nor the customs which they observe. For they neither inhabit cities of their own, nor employ a particular form of speech, nor lead a life which is marked out by any singularity. The course of conduct which they follow has not been devised by some or by any speculation or deliberation of inquisitive men, nor do they, like some, proclaim themselves the advocate of any merely human doctrines, but inhabiting Greek as well as barbarian cities. Tagline, that's a big thing. Like, where are you from? What's your nationality? What's your background? What type of city is this? That's all a big thing. And they're saying, like, Christians are kind of everywhere. As well as barbarian cities, according as the lot of each of them has determined. Following the customs and the natives in respect to clothing, food, and the rest of their ordinary conduct, they display to us their wonderful and confessedly striking method of life. So they look like everybody else in that community, and they kind of act for the day-to-day culture like everybody else in that community, but they've got something striking about them. They dwell in their own countries, but simply as sojourners, meaning that they're there, but they don't really belong there. as citizens, they share in all things with others, meaning they pay their taxes, they take care of their grass, they don't, contest the government, yet endure all things as if foreigners. Every foreign land is to them their native country, and every land of their birth as a land of strangers. So it goes on, and the epistle itself is pages and pages long, but it's this idea of like what sets us apart, and it has to do with the respect we have for each other, the respect we have for life, the respect we have for God, and the adoration for life, the adoration for others, the adoration for God, that we would treat others in a way, because again, this is being written in a time where women, children, slaves, they were property.
Right. Way different than we would understand it now.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's hard for people to grasp that.
Well, to the point of they marry as do others. They beget children, but they do not destroy their offspring. They have a common table, but not a common bed. And like
that was really
those
different.
two things.
Yeah. In that day and age, yeah.
Again, would those outside the church look at us inside the church now say these same things?
Yeah.
And that's where, going back towards when we started today, is that idea of having those relationships around us, someone who can look in and go, hey, is that really?
Right.
That's not where you said you wanted to go.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to be this.
Right.
Now, I guess that leads into this conversation. So if you're in that relationship,
Friendship relationship?
yeah,
Okay.
you're in that friendship, and you step into that space of, hey man, like that's not what you said you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I push back and I'm like, no man, like stay out of that. Like that's the no-go area. Like you can talk about all this stuff, but this is a no-go, like hands off, keep out. I got barbed wire there for a reason. I feel like we've got choices to make.
Yeah.
Because what society would tell us to do is,
Just leave that there.
I tried.
Yeah.
And
That's not what we're called to do.
It's not. It's not. But at the same time, Scripture tells us, don't cast your pearls before swine. Like, if somebody is hardened to the message,
I guess that would have to go into how deep is that friendship?
how deep is the friendship,
And how,
and how do you allow them to come back from that?
right. Obviously, you got to give them a little bit of line to go and, sink into it, but try and keep tabs on it. But if, it really depends on the friendship, the relationship. But I feel like if they've given you that permission, and then, it becomes that, well, is this area really going to hurt them or someone close to them? You maybe need to put your finger on that, push it in there a little bit, there's something there that's preventing you from entering, something that's caused them to push back on that. And if they've given you so much permission in other areas, obviously tread lightly, but I feel like that's one of those things. And then if it comes to like some kind of external pain to others, maybe it's one of those, Matthew 18, go get somebody else and like, hey, we noticed this together. Maybe we should reel it in. And if they're still pushing back, God's got a plan for everybody, and he can bring, we both have a story about God rescuing us from our own self, but that's a tread lightly thing. And how do we navigate that? I don't really know.
And I think it depends on the relationship, the depth, the duration, things like that. If if this is the first time you've gone to that person, they're immediately pushing back. That probably is an indication of how willing they are to allow you to speak into their life.
Right. And maybe that initial just like, hey, maybe leave them to think about that. Like, oh, wow, geez, Dave really brought that to my attention. Maybe I need to do some introspective work on that area of my life, you know?
Well, and I think too, the reality of if that leads to conflict, you know, you bring something to your friend's attention, they push back hard, and that's going to create conflict. Hey, man, you said I know what I said, but
right,
you know the power of the word but.
Right.
So you get cut off, but a week goes by, a year goes by, and that you run back into them, or the friend reaches back out and is like, man, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Are you still there in the sense of like, dude, that's huge that you would even admit that you were wrong in that moment. Like, I'm still down for it. Like the phrase I heard a long time ago was you put the friend above the friendship.
Right.
And that I think is also a cultural thing that we're missing right now is we want to be on our friend's side. Like I'm on I'm Team Ben. Ben. Doesn't matter what stupid decision Ben's made.
Right. Go for it.
Okay.
I'm here for you.
We'll put it on the table. You're a Browns fan. Browns fan.
Yes.
Okay. And you're a Browns fan regardless of what horrible picks they make in this year's draft.
Yes.
And here's what I've decided. Like, who's the guy with the biggest issues and the most marginal talent? Because that's who you're drafting. and history proves me right.
Yes. You got years and years of just sadness to back that statement up.
So you are on their team despite poor decisions.
Are you saying you've tried to speak into my life about that?
This is an intervention, man.
Right.
But it's not that we need to be on each other's side or on each other's teams. It's like, I just want you to know I'm for you.
Yeah.
So if I'm for you, then I'm for what's good for you. Even if, so by putting the friend, the individual above the friendship, I might lose my friendship over the benefit of my friend.
I'm still trying to see how that ties into the Browns. What's happening there?
So that's you're from Baltimore, Ben. Right. There are better teams. I'm not telling you to be a Ravens fan because as someone from Cleveland, I can't be a Ravens fan or recommend that to anybody because that would. But anyways, I digress. But to how willing are you to put that friend above the friendship, knowing this might be the last conversation I ever get to have with this guy because he might shut me out, but he's more valuable than it's like the dog that doesn't die, but is essentially dead.
Lucky?
Lucky, the three-legged blind dog that can't hear either.
Right.
But it's like, you know, but I can't imagine coming home from work and not having Lucky at the door.
Right. Lucky.
Well, Lucky doesn't even know you're here. Because basically he's a shell of who Lucky was 15 years ago. So is it for our own selfishness, like, man, I like having my workout buddy, so I'm not going down that road. I'm not bringing that up because, then I don't have a gym partner. I like going out on their boat, man. So I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna mess that up because how else am I gonna spend my weekends? Like, am I willing to put my friend above the friendship and speak truth into the circumstance that they're in, and with the hope of, even if that goes poorly, that in the future God can use whatever seed of truth was planted that day to bring that person back.
Right. And they would know that in that moment you had their best interest in, like you say, God bring them back and bring that realization back, like, wow, I might have messed that up, but Dave really had my best interest in mind in that situation, And
let's face it, how much stronger is that friendship gonna be?
Yeah.
Like, dude, you put it all on the line for my benefit. I didn't see it.
Right.
Like, so the end result is a stronger friendship than existed before.
So, like, Yeah, strong friendships, strong relationships work through conflict. Being able to address that either in the immediate or like you say, kind of pushing on a button and then taking a step back. Having that resolve to work through different things in life. And we see that in the book of Acts with Paul and Barnabas. They kind of, at the first point of the book of Acts, those two are together, Paul and Barnabas and Paul. They're going out, they're planting churches, they're going around, and they, travel back then wasn't go get on American Airlines and hop over to Ephesus.
Day after day of walking and talking.
And talking, they're not just like walking on opposite sides of the roads like I got my agenda, he's got his agenda, we're going to divide and conquer. No, those guys spent years together, and it comes to a point where they split, and it says, I think the word in the Bible, my version says, a sharp disagreement.
Yeah, sharp.
And they both went their separate ways. Now, I believe that they both still had each other's best interest in mind, but they decided that they couldn't.
They're still unified in purpose. They were,
right.
One didn't leave and try to undermine the other.
Right.
They were both still united in the purpose of building up the Church of Christ. They just did it separately.
Right.
And God can use that as well. So so here's the thing. I feel like we kind of bounced around different topics and whatnot. But this idea of the podcast, something to chew on. So here's the thing. Like, what's the thought? What are we chewing on this week, this month? The next time we walk into church and we look around and we realize we're not at the theater, we're not at the game, we are in a house with a family.
I think that's like, what kind of friendships do you have? What kind of relationships do you have? Like maybe something to chew on is really do some evaluation of your friendships. Like how deep are they? Are they 1,003 feet deep, or do you have 1,000 feet deep? And if so, what can you do to strengthen them? What can you do to make those more whole, I guess is the word I was kind of looking for. How can you challenge each other in a good way? Not contest against each other, but challenge to lift each other up. Where are those areas in your life that you can look to a friend to be challenged? I think that really that's the give and take of a good friendship is like, hey, I see you need help here, but I need help here too, and those things don't have to be mutually exclusive,
Yeah, and I think if in that evaluation, if you're like, man, I don't have anybody I could be like, hey, let me challenge you, or would you challenge me? Like,
right.
I don't have those people. Then find somebody like, man, he seems cool, or they seem cool. Like, hey, dude, here's the thing. I don't know how this is supposed to work, but like, you want to grab dinner? Like you like wings? We're gonna go watch a game at this sports bar.
Yeah, and understanding that it's not going to happen overnight.
And that would be our thing to chew on, until we're back and we chew on something else.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a constant evaluation in our life that you evaluate those relationships. But I think one of the big takeaways is to look around that community of faith and realize, how are you viewing it?
Yeah. So until next time, he's Ben, I'm Dave, and this is this is something to chew on.
Thanks for spending time with us.
This has been a presentation of Something to Chew On, a production of Rev 21 Media LC, created by the three amigos, Ben Garcia, Dave Drum, and Nick Smiloff. Legal counsel provided by Dewey Cheatham and Hal. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep chewing on the good stuff.
Daily Dose Depot, because you can't outrun time. Look alive even when you're dead inside. I mean, let's face it, your body's falling apart, but Daily Dose Depot can help slow the descent. From hair gummies to brain boosters, we've got something to fix whatever your WebMD search is freaking you out about this week. Mention Detox Me at checkout for free shipping on orders over $50. Daily Dose Depot. Fake it till you feel it.
Perfect.
Oh, dude, that was perfect.
Oh, we just lost another one.
They're dropping like flies.
Awesome.
All right.